I'm not complaining being here in Manhattan Beach. I thought I would do a live on a topic that is extremely interesting, something that we have been getting a lot of inquiries about. I will say this though, Manhattan Beach right now is a little chilly. I mean, I'm coming from 105 or so, or maybe more. So, still not complaining. Still a lovely place to be. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to show you exactly what it's like to be here. I know. Rough life. But if it's any consolation, I am still working like 6 hours a day, which is like part-time for me. Anyway, just wanted to talk to you guys about this topic, which has really been on the forefront of inquiries the past few weeks. I don't know what it is about the summer and sexual assault allegations, but we've definitely seen an increase in our firm. And I wanted to talk about the implications of false sexual assault accusations. And let me start by first saying this. You know, I'm concerned with false sex assault accusations, right? The context of what we're talking about is defamation. So naturally, the accusation would have to be a false one, not an accusation that in fact is provable, or even worse, something that is admittedly sexual assault. That is not the scope of what we're talking about today. We're talking about what is otherwise a false, fictitious, fabricated, grossly exaggerated accusation of sexual assault. So before we kind of talk about what that means, I think we should actually define what we mean by sexual assault. And fortunately, sexual assault is a concept that is defined by state law, which means every state has a statute which specifically articulates what sex assault is. And in most jurisdictions, the statute is something like this. It says sexual intercourse or sexual penetration, orally or otherwise, without somebody's consent, and otherwise defined as rape, right? This is very, very, very clear. It's not, there's usually no question of whether a sexual assault occurred. Usually the question in the criminal context is whether somebody actually had consent, whether somebody had the, was in the right state of mind. Somebody was intoxicated, somebody was perhaps on drugs or too much alcohol or something to that effect. That is, again, outside the scope of what we're talking about. We're talking about an accusation levied by someone accusing another person falsely of taking advantage of them sexually, to be very, very, very specific. Sexual assault. Okay. Notice I'm not talking about groping. I'm not talking about what could be sexual harassment in the workplace. I'm not talking about, whistling at someone. I'm not talking about any of those things. I'm talking specifically about the accusation of non-consensual sexual penetration or oral sex, or essentially what is rape. Okay. When you, as an alleged victim, come forward accusing someone of sexual assault, you can imagine that as a lawyer, a defamation lawyer, or even as if you're a criminal defense lawyer, it is a very heavy allegation. And we don't want to make light of something that is a serious accusation. We don't want to make light of something even when the accusation is made. It should be properly investigated. If you are a criminal defense lawyer and somebody comes to your office saying that, I was accused of sexual assault, you've got a pretty significant burden to interview the right people, go through the gambit and investigate those claims, and of course defend your client to the best of your abilities. If you're a prosecutor and a claim is made or accusation is made, or if you're a police officer, an accusation is made and it's in front of you about sexual assault, that needs to be taken extremely seriously. That's not something we want to marginalize, minimize, or otherwise sort of make a mockery of. I'm specifically talking about instances where sexual assault did not happen. Why am I taking so much time to make a big deal, to really underscore this? The reason is because I know this is an extremely sensitive topic. We're not talking about situations where we want to make light of something that happened to someone, male or female or otherwise. We want to take it seriously on every instance where that accusation is made. But for some reason, footnote, people knowingly will accuse someone of sexual assault. And when that happens, and you're on the receiving end of that accusation, what are your options? Well, number one, if you're sitting in front of me, we're going to investigate your likelihood of prevailing on a defamation claim. And where we have seen this most commonly is we often see this arise on social media. TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, Discord, other private chat groups, WhatsApp. I mean, you name it. But there seems to be a trend where usually in some sort of subculture or counterculture discussion board, discussion is made about a particular person and they identify that person. It's one of the elements of defamation. You have to identify either implicitly or expressly the individual you are talking about. And the story is told. Oh, I went to so-and-so's house and, they made an advance at me and, they groped me. Or they, smacked me on my rear end. Or, maybe inadvertently brushed by my chest or genital areas, right? All of these things are things that would make any person uncomfortable, okay? I'm not saying you should be okay with that if you're on the receiving end of that. Non-consensual is non-consensual. But let me be 100% clear. It's not sexual assault. By definition, it is not. So if you go on a forum on social media and you make a video about how you were assaulted, sexually assaulted by someone, naming that person, you have absolutely defamed that person. Let me say this again. Non-consensual touching or flirting that gets out of hand is not the same thing as sexual assault. It can't be. In Arizona specifically, sexual assault is defined to include to mean specifically penetration or oral sexual contact. And so groping doesn't fit the bill. That may be something else. I mean, if you went on a forum or went online and said somebody engaged in non-consensual touching, you would be accurate if that actually happened. And then there's a question of whether that was consensual or not. Was consent implied? Was it not implied? There may be other defenses, right? And I'm not looking at this from a defense standpoint, but we do have to look at the criminal statute. And so when I analyze this issue, somebody comes to me, that's the first thing I'm looking at, is we're looking at the definition of sexual assault in your jurisdiction. We're looking at whether that actually, the conduct at issue actually occurred. In most cases, it's not even close. I typically don't have someone come to me who says, listen, I was intoxicated, the other person was intoxicated, we had intercourse, and I'm being accused of sexual assault. That's not a great defamation case. It really is not. I'd probably say, see you later, go call my buddy who does criminal defense work. The fact pattern that I see is a complete fabrication. And sexual assault has become a buzzword. Now, let me be clear. This is something we need to raise awareness about. This is something that is extremely serious, which is why you don't want to be on the receiving end of a false accusation either. Either way, or rather one way or another, sexual assault is extremely serious. just the allegation alone carries a lot of weight, which is why you should not sling that allegation around at people, particularly in circumstances where, again, it's so far from the facts. And for whatever reason, I've had numerous people complain that this has happened to them, that they have an encounter, that they were nowhere near having intercourse with someone, nowhere near oral or some other physical penetration, not even close. And they woke up the next day to find themselves getting blown up on social media with the accusation of, this person sexually assaulted me. And so, listen, nobody wants to be accused of sexual assault. But nobody wants to be accused of something when it is the farthest from the truth. It is a heavy, heavy, heavy thing to have carrying over your reputation, the allegation that you sexually assaulted somebody. And then what happens? It catches fire. Hashtag metoo. This guy's a pervert. This guy's, sexually assaulted someone. This guy's a predator. Or this gal. Or this person, gender neutral. All the same. The point is, the statement, the allegation alone catches a lot of fire on social media. And if you are a business owner, the allegation is even worse, has extreme implication. You can lose your entire business. You could have worked 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years to build a reputation, and it's gone on the basis of somebody's false allegation. Now let me talk about people who create an echo chamber, right? So one person makes the false allegation, then a second person or a third person or a fourth person and so on grab the statement, this accusation, and they republish the statement. They vet no facts. They maybe don't even know the victim, the alleged victim. They don't know the assailant. They just heard something and they repost it with commentary. I'm not talking about a simple forward. I'm talking about with commentary that how disgusting is this person? This person's a predator. This person, did this and did that, and they're purporting facts that did not occur. That is also defamation. When you create the unreasonable risk of injury to somebody's reputation by republishing something, you have defamed somebody, right? It's sort of a secondary defamation, if you will. And we're seeing a lot of that because it's really easy on social media to publish something without vetting it at all and adding some commentary to it to make yourself look smart and to make a public service announcement about something that didn't actually happen, but name specific people. And it's extremely wrong. It's extremely damaging. Speaking of damaging, most jurisdictions have per se rules, which means there are 4 categories typically that are considered defamation per se. One of those categories is the accusation of criminal conduct. Sexual assault is obviously a crime. So if you defame somebody by accusing them of sexual assault when it did not occur, you don't have to prove the victim. Let me be clear. The alleged assailant, who's now the plaintiff in a defamation lawsuit, does not have to prove monetary damages, because in most jurisdictions that have this defamation per se rule, damages are presumed. That's a category of what we call general damages. So there was a question, who is accused? Hi there. We're just talking in generalities of the accusations and trends. This is not a conversation about anyone in particular or a particular news topic. If there's one you'd like to talk about, happy to discuss it. This is just more in general about the accusation and how to deal with it and what the implications are. Thanks for joining. Where was I? Yes, general damages. So general damages is a category of damages that a court or a jury is allowed to sort of put a number on based on the conduct. And I don't know what really tops an allegation of rape, sexual assault, death, right? Murder, manslaughter, attempted murder, maybe some significant monetary crimes. come close, but sexual assault is it's up there. It's the top 1, 2, or 3 things that you could be wrongfully accused of. So when you make these statements falsely, you're putting yourself at the hands of a judge or jury who's going to determine how much in damages how much somebody was injured in terms of monetary damages. And there's no real amount. How do you rehabilitate somebody's reputation after they were falsely accused on social media of such an egregious act? $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million? In some cases, defamation plaintiffs who've been wrongfully accused of sexual assault can actually board up monetary damages. They can prove special damages. They can prove that they lost a contract, they lost multiple clients, they were dropped from an advertising contract that they signed, or people just want to dissociate from them, right? And so sometimes there is a proximate cause, there is a proximate damage that we can actually accurately convey and ask a court to award. Other times we're left with just the general damages. But again, before you start blabbing stuff on social media, before you start making these, swinging words, which are terms of art that you have no business slinging, be smart. Bite your tongue a little bit. Should you really be publishing on social media that you were the victim of sexual assault when there was absolutely zero sexual contact? Again, as much as you might disagree with it, if this happened in Arizona, if this happened in Nevada, right, or if this happened in many other states where the specific defamation of sexual assault is penetration or oral sexual contact, then smacking somebody on the behind, groping somebody, brushing against their genitalia does not count. As bad as those things are, and I'm not advocating for those things, of course, as bad as those things are, it is 100% not sexual assault. I hope that's clear. So what's the solution? I mean, if you were groped, or you were, molested, or if you were sexually harassed, physically in the workplace, follow the proper channels, right? Again, truth is a defense. So if you say, John groped me without my consent, and in fact, John groped you without your consent, then you would be perfectly fine in saying that. I'm not saying that shouldn't be on social media if it's true. I'm saying for those of you who think it's okay to call something that it is 100% not, is just not okay. And unfortunately, there's a growing trend. Unfortunately, people think they can just say whatever they want on social media, on the internet generally, and have no suffer no damages as a result of that. And that's just simply not true. Judges are definitely in tune with this. The implications on a person's reputation can be significant, and it's unfortunate when it happens. And like I said, we're seeing a lot of this stuff. We're seeing a lot of it on TikTok especially. I mean, who knew 25 seconds to 15 seconds to 3 minutes could be so devastating for somebody and have so many civil consequences. But those consequences do exist. So at any rate, if you are somebody who's been falsely accused, what do you do? What do you do if you were wrongfully accused of sexual assault and it couldn't be further from the truth? The first thing you should do is you should preserve the evidence. You should preserve the screenshots, the text messages, the screen recordings. Make a record of the dates, the times. Make a record of who you believe has received those communications, because it's easy to forget. It's easy to get pissed off and lose track of time and lose track of people's names and numbers. Document. That's the first thing you do. And second thing, and it's really a close second, meaning it's probably something you do simultaneously, is you call somebody who is well versed in these things, an internet defamation lawyer, perhaps me, perhaps my firm, somebody who practices in this area, who can walk you through what you should say and what you shouldn't say in your defense publicly, what you should do to preserve the evidence, what your claims are, and help you walk you through this. So here's a question. Hey, Kyle, So in theory, if I wrongfully repost a false accusation, mention the alleged assailant, I could be part of a defamation case, correct? Yeah, correct. It's possible. It's possible. And I'm leaving the celebrity public figures out of this only because there's a different standard that applies. But if this happened in your friend's circle, yeah, my friend Tina, unfortunately, she was sexually assaulted last Saturday by this dude, Steve, right? And Steve's a predator, girls. If you're in Old Town Scottsdale, watch out for Steve. He sexually assaulted my friend Tina. When you do stuff like that and you're republishing what somebody else wrote, you have just as much blood on your hands, unfortunately. Or at least I think a good plaintiff's lawyer could make a case that you should be held just as liable. So yes, absolutely. And just think about the logic behind why. What kind of diligence did you do? You were at least negligent, right? You have a duty to always speak truthfully and speak honestly and speak accurately. Not just in business, but generally. You can't just say whatever you want about somebody, publish it to other people. And by the way, when I mean publish, it means just to one other person. It doesn't have to be on the media or in the news, on social media. If you send a text message to a third person that said, Steve sexually assaulted Tina, and that's false, Steve has an action for defamation. So when we say publish, we just mean put the word out there. So the answer to your question, Kyle, is yes, in theory. That's good. That would be the case. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's and again, it's really, I understand it's a sensitive topic, and particularly with the metoo movement, that people who are legitimately sexually assaulted should voice their experiences. They're not to be silenced, and that's not what this is about. And I hope that's not misconstrued. I just want to make it 110% clear that that's the message. But part of the message is also, look, you can't fabricate things. You can't make a mountain out of a molehill, or make a mountain out of something that never existed to begin with. And unfortunately, you're going to be held to a standard, like everybody else, to speak honestly. And at a minimum, don't be negligent when publishing purported statements of fact, not opinions, right? Calling somebody shady falls into, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, could be a gray area. Calling somebody a sexual predator is not a gray area in most jurisdictions. Calling somebody an assailant is not a gray area. Calling somebody a predator, what if you say that they're a predator without the word sexual? I guess it depends on the context, but I think predator still has the implications and would still be something that you could sue over. So, hi, thanks for joining. So anyway, that's kind of my rant about false sex assault accusations. Again, distinguishing them from truthful ones, which deserve to be told. People should be protected from legitimate predators. But groping is not sexual assault. Brushing up against somebody is not sexual assault. I'll go a step further. Smacking somebody on their rear end is not sexual assault unless the statute specifically defines those things as that. And most of the statutes that I've read, Arizona, Nevada, for example, California, sexual penetration or oral penetration or some sort of sexual copulation is required. You can't use your Fantasyland definition of what made you uncomfortable. And again, if you go on social media and you say, Steve made me uncomfortable, okay, maybe Steve made you uncomfortable. That's a fact. If you say, Steve looked at me weird and gave me weird vibes, okay, that's fine. Steve sexually assaulted you is completely different. I think I've beat the dead horse here quite a bit. But I just want to make sure this is clear because, again, we get these inquiries all the time. Sometimes it's people asking what they can say on social media. But most of the time it's people who are on the receiving end of these egregious accusations and then have to deal with the reputational falling out that they shouldn't have to deal with. I mean, frankly, like I said, there's very few things that are worse than being labeled a sexual predator. Very few things that are worse than being accused of raping somebody or sexually assaulting somebody. Very few things that are worse than that. What other questions do you guys have? Hopefully that all makes sense. I'm hoping that I'm hoping that the next time any of you see an accusation like this on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or you get a text message or a message on Signal or WhatsApp, that you ask some more questions, or at the very least, you don't pass it on until you know the truth. And you have to know the source, right? If it's somebody close to you and you trust that person, and that person says, I was sexually assaulted, you're probably going to ask a lot of questions, and you're probably going to want to know the facts. And once you discover those facts, you're welcome to publish all the facts that you know are facts. But the moral of the story is, do not, without doing any sort of diligence, do not negligently publish to anyone a false accusation, because you can be implicated in civil litigation, and it probably has greater implications depending on the industry you're in. But that is the talk for today. I hope you guys thought that was useful. We're coming to you today from Manhattan Beach. Beautiful, sunny, breezy, crisp weather, crisp beach. The vibe in this town is just unbelievable. I mean, people are just so chilled out, just blasting their music, you know, shirts optional kind of thing. People are still taking, you know, COVID seriously and distancing and doing all that, which is refreshing. But nevertheless, great speaking with y'all today. And if you have any questions on false sex assault accusations, if you have any comments, feel free to drop them below in this video once we upload it, or send us a DM, and we're happy to answer your questions. Until next time, sayonara.